Welcome everyone to today's edition of Daily Connections. The whole reason that we started this a few days ago now, about the 19th of March was when we started it, when things started to change pretty dramatically because of the COVID-19 restrictions. My commitment has always been to be out here on a daily basis, to be a consistent voice, a consistent positive message, a chance for us to get together and collaborate and engage in conversation, to look each other in the eye if that's what works for your Zoom platform. The idea is just to have a chance to connect, to collaborate in a positive way for 30 minutes every day. Have some routine in your day if you need that. And that actually ties to today's topic. So our commitment has been to keep Fridays a little bit lighter. Today is Friday, and I tend to wear red on Fridays in a shout out to Central College, my alma mater. I'm a proud Central grad. And so I got my little central pin going on here. And I was just on a call at Central with the listening to some updates about what's going on there. And I continue to be just really proud of that institution and the things that they do to care for their students and their faculty and the community, and to be good, responsible fiscal stewards and continue to move forward in this time. So today we're talking about tackling boredom. Now, I can't imagine that any of us are getting bored, right? Nobody is looking around going, what am I going to do this weekend? I think it was last Monday already that I heard descriptions of people talking about, gosh, I don't know, we're bored on Friday by 5:30, and what do we do, and what do we do with the kids? And right now, boredom is an interesting topic. So I did a little bit of research. Just a little bit of just poking around and seeing what there is to say about boredom. And a couple of things that struck me really, really interesting about boredom is that there seems to be some inconsistency about what describes it, but there are some themes, right? There are themes from, we don't know what causes boredom, to themes of, well, it's a lack of variety, duh, to some of the research and some of the articles that I read pointed to boredom being a lack of self-management. That if you allow yourself to be bored, that is that is a choice, or it is a self-management sort of a gap in emotional intelligence. And so then that puts it back into my lane, right? Back to the things that we talk about here at Your Clear Next Step, where we're always trying to help us have better work days and better days, and continue to work better together so that we can have better evenings and better weekends, and we can contribute to better communities. So I got to thinking about my own childhood, and I recall vividly that if I said to my mom something like, I'm bored, the answer was distinctly and immediately responded with, a list of chores that I could do, volunteer activities I could engage in, a musical instrument I could practice, since I hadn't practiced since my last lesson, the things that I could do outside. And she would just start going, and she wouldn't even miss a beat. And I was, Mom, I'm bored, right? And she would have this list of things to do. And as I stop and realize how I have raised my own children, I'm just super thrilled to say, Mom taught me well, and I do exactly the same thing with my own kids. Okay, so what do we do with this? If we, on the outside looking in, can tell someone there's no excuse for being bored, here is this whole slew of things that we could be doing, then I wonder if, as we tackle boredom, and as we think about it for ourselves, what are some of the things we can do to kind of help manage that? How can we demonstrate a little bit better emotional intelligence, a little bit better self-management in the face of what looks like boredom? So here are a couple of thoughts I had. The first one is, don't let yourself call it bored. This came from a variety of different sources. There were a couple other writers who shared on this as well, and we'll put some of those links in our recap as well. But don't let yourself call it bored. If you say, I'm bored, you run the risk of saying out loud to your mom, I'm bored, and then she'll give you all these other things to do. But you also, by calling it that thing, you're giving yourself kind of this permission to go, okay, right? You're giving yourself permission to continue to feel those feelings. And what if instead of that, we tried other words like, I'm feeling like I want to be curious about this situation, or I want to meditate on this, or I want to give some thought about this, or I want to pursue it. So if we can, instead of calling it bored, one of the writers that I read had something about, waiting in line. Instead of waiting in line, I'm bored waiting in line, he called it waiting in line meditation. Or if you're, watching the rain fall, staring out the window, I'm staring out the window, meditation, right? And then that gives you permission to reframe it, to focus it on something else. I'm not just sitting here bored. I have this opportunity to meditate, to think, to be intentional in my thought process. So a second technique is to create variety. Create variety is the second one. So a change of scenery might be in order. I cannot help but laugh at one of my good friends who's been posting, he's been posting Facebook posts on a daily basis. And it started as a tour or a wine tour or a house tour or what, but every day he's going to a new place in his room and entertaining us with anecdotes about a half a glass of wine. And but whatever it is, he's changing his scenery, right? Instead of while the theme stays the same and has been staying the same for several days now, the scenery changes. Like he physically gets up and changes scenery. Here in my own workspace, this is a room, the room where I work in my office. Generally on Mondays and Fridays, we can have up to 6 or 7 people in here. And so I've been creating variety by moving. I do some kinds of work facing one way at one desk, and then I move over to a different workspace and create variety that way to literally shift my focus. The things that I look at in front of me are different depending on what work I'm doing or when I need a change of scenery. So create variety, create a change of location if you can, from room to room, chair to chair, whatever you can do in that space. Leverage it as a trigger is my third tip. So don't let yourself call it bored is first, create variety is second. Leverage it as a trigger. So when you sense yourself saying, I'm bored, or when you sense that boredom setting in, that lackluster sense, that causes our shoulders to kind of sag, causes our posture to go kind of down, and right, we kind of go like this when we're bored, or our eyes start to glaze over. When you sense that, be aware, be emotionally aware and physically aware of yourself enough to go, whoa, that's the boredom trigger. All right, folks, let's do something, right? And use it as a trigger. Use it as a trigger to clean something, to plant something, to empty something, to do those things that you've been putting off, right? Mark Twain, I think it was, who said, you don't put off the things that you don't want to do. You eat that live toad first thing in the morning, and nothing worse will happen to you all day. And there's something to be said for that. But for those of us, if you didn't eat that live toad first thing in the morning, as soon as you notice yourself getting bored, flip it around. Use that as the chance to do that tough task, that thing that you've been putting off, that thing that you don't really want to do. Use it as a trigger. Use it because you'll immediately then take that sensation of boredom and you'll turn it around to something active and forward moving. And then my last tip, which I hope is very useful to us, and I think we got to get a little creative on this one, is to shift your focus to someone else. When you notice yourself feeling bored, I invite you to shift your focus to someone else, not just something else, not just somewhere else, but someone else. I think what happens with boredom is it's this sense of, well, here's what I want, and I am not being fulfilled, and my needs aren't being met, and I'm not being properly stimulated, and I, right? It's so much of the I sentence. What if when we start to sense that, gosh, we're bored or we're lacking enthusiasm about something, what if we immediately stopped and said, okay, let's think about the people in this dwelling space with me. How can I entertain or energize, or what can I do for one of them? Let's think about people in my family who don't live here, but I could FaceTime them, I could call them, I could send them a note, I could create them a card. What about people in my neighborhood? I could go out and walk and wave at their windows. I read just a wonderful post from a gal today who happened to be looking out her window when someone else was walking by, and that someone else was walking a dog, and she didn't know the person walking the dog, but the person walking the dog waved, and she waved back vigorously, right? Immediately, it is that stimulation. What if we went outside and started waving at people, right? What if we thought about who could we serve in our neighborhood? What if we thought about how we can reach out to the food pantries in our communities, to the other shelters or the care services in our communities, and say, hey, I'm here, I'm not physically with you, but what can I do? What can I do to help? How can I do things? Can I package things? Can I make things? What can I do from here? And immediately shift our focus, instead of being on ourselves and on the boredom that we're feeling, use that sort of energy to go, no, it's not about me. It's about someone else, and who can I help?